Nona Sivley, a 29-year-old sous chef from Atlanta, Georgia, will compete on the notorious 8th season of Hell's Kitchen along with 15 other chefs in an attempt to win a head chef position at LA Market and $250,000. Nona is considered by many people the weakest winner in the history of the show, but is this justified? Well, today, we'll be going over her entire run in Hell's Kitchen, from every important moment and confessional, and see how the supposedly bad winner ended up being the one to come out on top. Be sure to hit that subscribe and like button to support these story videos, and with that, here's a story of Nona Sivley.
Bloody hell, here I go again.
For the first time ever, a winner of this season would actually have a jam-packed premiere episode, but as we'll see in a second, not all of it was for the best of reasons, as after a really good first confessional foreshadowing her winning this season, she would produce one of the worst internet dishes of the day.
Wow. Did you forget to cook the asparagus?
No.
I'm glad you find it funny, sweet. Can you imagine if 100 diners were cutting into that? No chance. Why is it so sweet?
Because I put honey on it.
Wow, what a disaster.
Now, of course, this isn't actually the worst thing ever, as only one winner up until this point in Hell's Kitchen had produced a good signature dish, with that being Heather, so if anything, the odds are on Nona's side. And also, what really matters is how she does during the dinner services. And during the premiere, she would seemingly do fine, or at the very least, not be in the middle of anything during an opening service that was so bad that for the first time ever, Ramsay would name both teams as losers on opening night. Unfortunately though, when it came to the nominations, Nona would piss off the wrong person, beginning their rivalry this season.
No.
In the end, Sabrina would stay, and Lisa would be the one to go home, but nonetheless, what an episode this was for Nona, as she had a clear winner's quote, an awful signature dish, and a likely rivalry with a clear villain on the red team, which while good in the fact that this should naturally get the audience on Nona's side, it's probably not the best thing ever that she's in a rivalry one episode into the season. And unfortunately, episode 2 would prove that the premiere episode wouldn't just be a one-off thing, as Nona and Sabrina continue to bicker at each other. Luckily for Nona, she was highlighted somewhat during service, as her fish would be praised despite having to deal with Emily's awful performance on meats, but in the end, that would mostly be it for Nona this episode. And while she certainly seems to be a solid chef, it's official at this point that a big part of her story this season is going to be a rivalry with Sabrina, for better or for worse. Episode 3 though would start very well for the two's rivalry, as Sabrina and Nona would actually lead the red team to victory during the breakfast reward challenge. Unfortunately, after the red team lost service, with Emily and Melissa clearly being the ones most at fault, Nona would be the one most vocal to protect her friend Melissa, and would get Sabrina nominated instead for literally no reason. While Raj would end up getting eliminated from the blue team, I do think this is an awful look for Nona, as no matter how much the audience may hate Sabrina, for Nona to do to her what the likes of Tiffany and Joanna did to Julie in season 3 is just simply not a good look, and could turn fans against Nona. And unfortunately, we would see the same exact thing happen in the following episode, as after Melissa and Sabrina's infamous fight, while Nona couldn't protect her friend Melissa this time, she would once again campaign for Sabrina to go up over Gail. Now, while this wasn't as egregious as the previous episode, as Sabrina had acted nasty all day, and actually made mistakes that night, but nonetheless, 4 episodes into the season, and while Nona has actually been really good in the challenges and no dinner service mistakes thus far, I don't think anyone can really take her seriously as a winner contender at this point given just how one-note her storyline is this season. And unfortunately for Nona, that will continue on into episode 5, and in some ways, the rivalry not only reaches peak here, but Nona will look her absolute worst in this rivalry, as not only would Sabrina win the best of the worst, but Nona's frustration over this almost got her in serious trouble. So yeah, once again an awful look for Nona in this rivalry that should seemingly get the audience totally behind her. And while that was likely the case early on, one could argue that this episode cemented more people on Sabrina's side, or at the very least, people don't love Nona as much as they likely should given how insufferable Sabrina can be. Episode 6 now, and while not as bad rivalry and edit-wise for Nona, she would have her first true all-around bad episode cooking-wise, as her quail challenge dish was berated by Ramsay for looking like roadkill, and she would have her first true bad service of the season on Lucky for Nona, she was bailed out once again, as Sabrina would be the nominee that night, but Ramsay would call her down, making this the first time since Christina Mashimer where a winner would be nominated, obviously not a good sign. Luckily though, she would survive, although at the loss of her friend Melissa, who to be fair was on the blue team at that point, but still, a really bad all-around episode for Nona. However, episode 7, we would finally see the end of the Nona-Sabrina rivalry, at least on TV, as Sabrina promised she would change her attitude going forward. And while Nona didn't buy this for a second, this is literally around the time where Sabrina would become better personality-wise and a beast in the kitchen, and again, in some ways making Nona look bad. Cooking-wise though, things would get off to a good start for Nona, as she would win the challenge for her team. However, during service, she would once again struggle, as she fell behind on the garnish station. While the overall service was decent, Nona was seen as the worst on the red team that night, with Ramsay even only calling her down despite her and Sabrina being the nominees. But in the end, nobody would go home, and while maybe not the worst service ever from Nona despite almost going home, she seems to be on a prototypical downfall in Hell's Kitchen, and she needs to pick it up quickly. Episode 8 would arguably be Nona's quietest episode of the season, as she once again had a good challenge dish, and while she made a mistake early on in apps during service, Trev was far and away the biggest problem in the kitchen that night, and after getting kicked out, the other 4 ladies would come together to dominate service and beat the blue team. So while not exactly the best bounce back episode ever, it is a nice change of pace for Nona. Unfortunately for Nona, episode 9 would not just be her worst episode of the season, but arguably one of the worst episodes from a winner ever. The funny thing is, it got off to an amazing start, as Nona would once again win the challenge for the red team, this one being the ever so important blind taste test, earning a 3 out of 4, a massive resume booster for winning chances. However, Nona went from her highest point to lowest point in Hell's Kitchen once service came. Yeah, say what you will about if this was over the top from Ramsay, but at the end of the day, Nona can thank her absolute lucky stars that the blue team was much worse that night, as had the red team lost, she wouldn't have even made it to the Black Jackets. Now I will say, Nona would get a good pep talk from Ramsay after service, confirming that she had the best palate of the remaining chefs and because of that, was still a frontrunner in his eyes. But nonetheless, it's hard to argue this not being a flat out awful episode for Nona. But luckily for Nona, she would have a nice cooldown episode to follow, as she didn't even get any content until service, and while she once again made one mistake on apps, overall she did pretty good, and this would be enough for her to earn a Black Jacket. So while Nona has no doubt had a bumpy road thus far in Hell's Kitchen en route to a Black Jacket, she's still likely the second most likely to win behind Julian, as Trev, Sabrina, and Gail had simply been far too inconsistent, and Russell had somehow someway overtaken Sabrina as the most hated chef this season. But regardless, Nona's still gonna have to turn up a notch in the Black Jackets if she truly wants to win this season. Nona's first Black Jacket episode would be a relatively quiet one, which is actually really good, as while in a perfect world she would be highlighted, due to being relegated to tableside during service, she would avoid being a part of the worst Black Jacket service ever, where everyone in the kitchen made a mistake of some sort that night, leading to them getting ejected. Not to only that, but in a full circle moment, Nona would be the swing vote between Gail and her rival Sabrina to go up against Trev for elimination, and in the end, would choose Sabrina, which in turn finally got her eliminated. Again, this moment wasn't really highlighted as Nona's revenge or her winning their feud against Sabrina, but nonetheless, between Sabrina leaving and literally everyone but Nona looking bad this episode, this is truly a great start to the Black Jacket phase for Nona despite not doing much of anything. The quiet but relatively good edit would continue for Nona the following episode, as she only lost the challenge by 2 percentage points, and despite making a mistake during service, she and Russell were shown as the chefs leading the team after Ramsay walked out on the final 5 during service. In the end, Gail would go home, and seeming out of nowhere due to her ironically being a lot more quiet than before, Nona's in the final 4, and looking stronger than ever. And while Julian is still the favorite, between her struggling during the Black Jackets while Nona's done fine, and Nona's winner's chances have likely never been higher. Nona's chances once again improved dramatically, as she won the Taste It Not Make It challenge, meaning that she had essentially won the 2 most important challenges in Hell's Kitchen in the Taste It Not Make It and Blind Taste Test. Unfortunately, this would not carry into service, as Nona would drag a couple times on appetizers, which was not good given that the service overall went pretty well.
Well done.
So yeah, an overall above average run for Nona, as despite missing her sabotage, she did really well at the pass. But in all honesty, the bigger news was that Trev and Julian did not do well at the pass whatsoever, which got the former eliminated and got Russell named as the first person in the final 2, leaving it between Julian and Nona for not only the other spot in the final 2, but given Russell's edit, the person joining him would likely be this season's winner. As has unfortunately been the case for Nona this season, while she did of course have her positives, it seems as if it was mostly the failures of others, in this case Julian's bad pass run and overall late game downfall, that got her into the final 2. But yeah, holy crap, Nona's in the final 2 over Julian, who seemed like a lot to win the season. with Russell of all people, who again is despised by the fan base despite being the better of two, being the only person in her way. So it truly seems as if at this point, despite her up and down run, Nona's gonna win this season. But again, maybe this is all just a fake out from the editors, as Russell's finale started great, as he beat Nona at the final challenge and got the first overall pick, with Nona's team in the end consisting of Trev, Melissa, Gail, and Boris. Not exactly a team to give you much confidence, but nonetheless, it's time for the final dinner service, and for the first time in this series, I'm gonna show you not only how Nona did, but how her competition and Russell did as well. So yeah, let's go over this very interesting run of Nona this season, as there's quite a lot to talk about. First things first, while her performance wasn't that bad this season, in fact being a massive standout in challenges, she pretty much made a service mistake in every service from the final 11 on, and let's be frank, had she been on a more talented season, she would have been lucky to even make it to a black jacket, much less win the season. And that's unfortunately the big knock for Nona, and why she's ranked so low by most people, is that it feels like she more so fell into a win as opposed to earning it. Again, credit to her for being decent this season and thus having no competition, but even then, she still came close a couple times, not even earning a black jacket. And then of course, her only true competition in Julian and Russell put on awful leadership performances. And again, while Nona did dang good as a leader, had either one of those two even been average, she just simply doesn't win this season. Now let's talk about her edits, and yeah, you can't talk about Nona this season without talking about her rivalry with Sabrina. And despite this on paper seeming like such an easy way to get the audience on Nona's side, due to her actions and Sabrina's edit getting a lot better as the season went along, I truly do think a lot of people, while maybe not totally on Sabrina's side, definitely didn't view Nona as some massive fan favorite compared to the unlikable Sabrina during this rivalry. So when it's all said and done, between Nona's inconsistent services, having no competition, falling into a win, and even her edit not making her that likable, I can't argue anyone who indeed has her as Hell's Kitchen's worst winner. But hey, in the end, she's the one with $250,000 in her bank account and her own restaurant, so who cares what some YouTuber like me has to say about her. But anyway guys, there is a story of Nona Sivley. Let me know what you think of Nona in the comments below, and if you think she's indeed the worst winner in the show's history. Be sure to hit that subscribe and like button if you want more story videos, and until next time, have a good one guys.
Get out of there.